This interview is part of the History Heard project. The content of this interview may be used for historical research. However, no part of the video itself may be reproduced without the express written permission of an authorized representative of History Heard or Joel Engel. Today is July 1st, 2009 at 3 p.m. This is an interview with Joel Engel in Armonk, New York. He was born on February 4th, 1936 in New York City, New York.
But it was really like a hobby. You know, it wasn't our main assignment. We had other main assignments, but we at Bel Evs you were allowed to spend time on research projects, and then lightning struck. The Federal Communications Commission came and said, "Hey, we've observed that UHF television, which went up to channel 74, isn't being used. You know, the channels up to channel 13 were very heavily used, but this other band of channels was barely being used. We're thinking about, we're not definitely going to do it, but we're thinking about taking the top 14 or 12 or thereabouts channels and assigning them to a mobile telephone service, but not the same kind of primitive service you have now. You gotta do something jazzy with it. You gotta, first of all, be much more efficient in your use of spectrum. Okay. So they issued this docket. It was called a notice of inquiry. Anybody wants to respond? What would you do with this? And this caused a big stir at AT&T. They felt they had to respond.
Yeah.
But they didn't have anything to respond with, except these three young kids. We were very early in our career, and you're not going to bet the farm on three young kids.
Yeah.
So I remember there was this big meeting that was held in the executive conference room, and we were not allowed to attend. It was just all vice presidents, and my office happened to be the closest of the three of us. So the other two came to my office, and we sat there wondering what's going to happen. And it was that day that I decided I wanted to be a vice president, because I wanted to be in that room when the decision was made. So what happened was we were the only horse they could bet on.
Yeah. So
what they did was they went to the FCC and they said, we'd like to work on this, but this is just a gleam in our eye, and it's going to take us some time to do this, and we don't even want to spend the money, because it turned out it was many millions of dollars that it ultimately cost to develop the system. They said, we don't want to make this investment unless you give us some reasonable assurance that if we can prove this thing, that you will actually give us the frequencies. And so AT&T came to us and they said, how long do you think it would take to do the study to prove that it would work? And we said 3 years. And the lawyers at AT&T said, the FCC will never agree to 3 years. The most they'll agree to is 18 months. And we said, we don't think we can do it in 18 months. But they won. They went to the FCC and they said, if it'll take us 18 months, and if at the end of the 18 months we have a satisfactory answer, we want assurance from you that you'll give us the frequencies. And in the meantime, they let us start working. They formed a group with me as a head, and the other two reported to me, and then over the course of a year, I was allowed to hire people, and they brought in people from other parts of Bell Laboratories. And it took the FCC 18 months to decide that they would say yes. So we ended up getting the 3 years, okay? Because the 18 months didn't stop. And we ended up producing a book. This is a copy of it, okay? Which, that's why I wanted you to come in here. It's I can't let you have it, of course, but you can certainly take a look at it. And it has all of the design parameters that are essentially the mobile telephone system that was put into place. The first one, which was an analog system, this was before the digital technology had taken hold. And we sent this to the AT&T, and AT&T made a smaller, abridged version, and they sent it to the FCC. And this sort of became the Bible, and it was my group that put that together. Okay? As it turned out, the FCC then took an additional 14 years before they finally agreed to have the service. So we filed this in, I think, 1971 or 71, I think, okay? It wasn't until 1984 that the very first cellular telephone service was allowed in Chicago. What had happened was we built a test system in Chicago to first of all show that it could scale up. We had built small systems with 3 cells, 4 cells, but now we built a system that covered the whole Chicago metropolitan area with thousands of customers, and it was both a technical test to see if it would work and a market test to see if people were interested in paying for it. And again, those first customers were doctors and real estate agents and things like that. And that system ran for 7 or 8 years until in 1983, finally the FCC said, okay, we'll make it a regular service, because one of the aspects of a test trial like that is the FCC could come back at any time and say, okay, test's over. You learned everything you needed to learn. It's not a service, and you would have to take this stuff away from the customers and tear down the system and everything. So, and the reason it took so long was, again, competitive regulatory. And the thing that was so frustrating was that this document became a public document. Once you file something with the FCC, it's in the public domain. So systems were built by the telephone company in Japan, systems were built by the telephone companies in all the Scandinavian countries, and they were up and running. And we, the inventors, and the people of the United States, couldn't have the service.